On today's World Insight with Tian Wei, Angela Merkel makes her 12th state visit to China. Can China-Germany trade persevere despite external pressure? And we get up close and personal with the Philadelphia Orchestra. How has their music bridged the gap between China and the U.S.?
In times of turbulence, both sides are always looking for something they can agree on, and this seems to be one of them.
Here is our host, Tian Wei.
Hello and welcome to World Insight, coming to you live on CGTN from Beijing. We start in the capital city of China, where German Chancellor Angela Merkel is paying a state visit to China from Friday to Saturday. Her entourage includes a large business delegation. So what's going to be the significance for both countries, this specific visit at a time of dramatic change worldwide? Take a look.
It's Merkel's 12th official trip to China. Chinese President Xi Jinping held talks with Merkel, saying the world's peace and stability is being threatened by unilateralism and protectionism, and no country can stay aloof. He said both countries should work together to face common challenges. For her part, Merkel said that Germany would like to engage with China in the spirit of multilateralism and free trade. Germany confirms that China is the country's largest source of imports from January to June, followed by the Netherlands and the United States. But China is its third largest export market after the U.S. and France. China says trade with Germany developed steadily as bilateral trade and two-way investments both saw growth. In the first 7 months of this year, Germany made nearly $1.2 billion of new investments to China, up by over 62.7%. China's investment to Germany, just over $1 billion, went up nearly 30% in the same period. China says there is big potential for cooperation in the digital economy, industrial networks, electric cars, artificial intelligence, environmental protection, and third-party markets. China says it expects a big German presence at the upcoming major trade fair in Shanghai this November. Experts say that many EU countries, including Germany, are facing trade pressure from the U.S., which could lead to an economic downturn. Because of this, Merkel's latest China trip is vital in fostering new business opportunities, bringing new momentum to the country's economy.
For more on German Chancellor Angela Merkel's visit to China, joining us in our Beijing studio, we have Daniel Guo, long way from Brussels, Director of the Center for European Policy Studies. Good to see you here, Daniel, in Beijing.
It's a pleasure to be here, finally.
Good to see you. Liu Baocheng, Professor and also the Dean of the Center for International Business Ethics from University of International Business and Economics. Professor, good to see you once again. Last but certainly not least, Jörg Wittke, President of the European Union Chamber of Commerce in China. Jörg, good to see you after so many years. So, all of these big stars appear in the studio. Obviously, it means there is a big thing that's going on right now in Beijing, Angela Merkel's state visit to China. Now, Mr. Guo, how much do you think this will be able to bring the two countries closer at a time of very complex change?
I think it's not so much the visit itself, because Germany has had a very consistent policy towards China for the last 20 years. It's more to find ways how the two could actually collaborate, concrete terms, on trade and other issues, how to limit the trade war. And I think that is what they two should discuss together, and also find other areas where there's a common interest. And that could be, for example, climate change. And therefore, they have a lot to talk about, but the key would be concrete action now.
Concrete action, I think, already happening between the two countries for really quite some time. If you look at just one example, automobiles coming from Germany. Automobiles drive China and Germany trade ties, some say, with German manufacturers in China selling a whopping 5.1 million automobiles in the year 2018 alone, while a majority of German branded vehicles were produced in China. Just 290,000 passenger cars were actually exported from Germany to China last year. Another 150,000 cars were shipped from Germany auto plants in the U.S. to China. Interesting picture there isn't it, Mr. Whitaker? Since U.S. is being mentioned, at least in this part, let's talk about that. So what does that backdrop, China-U.S. trade conflict, if not war, mean for China and Germany bilaterally, and probably even on a more multilateral basis?
Well, if you look at the trade war, everyone talks about China and the U.S. As a matter of fact, there is quite some hassling and problematic gesturing between Europe and Germany and the U.S. as well. We have the President of the United States labeling the before-mentioned cars as a security risk, which is interesting because the biggest exporter from the U.S., as we have just seen, in cars to China are German brands. So we're all in there together, China and Germany being hammered by the Trump administration. And of course, we're all in a situation where we all lose money, many of us, that used to be better put up there. So in short, I guess we have to find something in common in order to at least balance this kind of loss in global business that we experience.
Can you, what is that thing in common, as you say?
Well, for example, it's opening up the market access to improve that. I mean, there's a long list of things that Angela Merkel is going to raise today on market access, and same as that China has the ability of selling its Huawei equipment, for example, into Germany. So there's things basically in a way that says, let's keep the status quo plus a little bit better. That's already a major achievement.
Oh, that's the nature you see, is it? Let's keep the status quo plus a little bit more. Is that also the nature you see it, Professor Liu, when the maneuvering space of China and Germany working together?
Well, I think Germany is now put in a more subtle and delicate position by what is going on between China and the United States. You know, Donald Trump is really fighting with everyone. It seems that it's creates an opportunity for China and Germany to get closer. But many of those demands levied by Donald Trump on China are still shared by Germany, like market access, IP protection, and equal level playing fields among foreign businesses versus domestic ones. And then also the Belt and Road issue. Belt and Road is a strong proposition from China, and definitely from the Chinese perspective, Germany plays a very important role. But there is still a high level of suspicion and ill understanding of the true intention and strategic consequence.
So what you're suggesting, Professor?
What I'm suggesting is that, okay, let's let's have reassurance of what we already have, both on a conceptual level and on a practical level. And in the meantime, to defend a multilateral trading system and fight against protectionism. And then, let's find more ways to work together to shun the unilateralism.
Oh, all right. You've already got two concepts going on there. Mr. Gorowa, let me just repeat that. One is saying status quo, maybe a little bit more. And this is saying, Professor Liu is saying, let's do it conceptually, let's also do it pragmatically. Maybe they don't cross one another, but, why not? Mr. Gorowa, what is the nature now of this ever-evolving world mean for this nature of relationship?
I think it has to play on two levels. There's the German-China level, where the status quo plus a little bit improved would be very good. And then, if you talk about Belt and Road, for example, there the situation for Merkel is a little delicate, because many in Brussels have the impression Belt and Road is meant to divide Europe. And that Merkel cannot do. So she wants to have...
That's the perception.
That's the perception. I'm not saying it is. It's perception, right? We all know that at the end, the road of Belt and Road finishes in Germany in a certain sense. So it's made for Germany, not by Germany, but for Germany. But the key question is, and I think here the Chinese side could reassure Merkel, that they will not use Belt and Road to try to divide the European Union. And that, I think, would be a key issue on which Merkel will have to insist.
I'm sure a lot of discussions are going on behind the closed doors when the two leaders and the state leaders are meeting with one another. But let's just go through some of the specific points that we already know about. One is about Chinese Premier Li Keqiang asked the German side to lift the export control. That has always, Professor Liu, a point China raised, even though our German colleagues suggest that even that is being so-called lifted and loosened, it would not be that much money that we are talking about here. So, Professor Liu, why is China so key on this? How much do you think that being done to a certain extent, let's just say from the German counterpart, would that mean for creating goodwill and probably good results?
I think one is that it can be a mean to tackle the trade imbalance issue, that because China has been enjoying what is defined as trade surplus.
I see facial expression already on your face to say, oh, really, is that going to be that much? Go ahead.
You know, give us a chance to buy more from you. Okay. And also buy something very expensive. That's one thing. The other is, okay, China is aiming at, playing a larger share in the emerging industries that is lying ahead, and definitely Germany has an upper hand, particularly now we benchmark the Made in China 2025 with 4.0 industrial in Germany.
Yes.
And we can be a very good student. So,
meanwhile, there seems to be some kinds of decoupling technology-wise between China and the United States.
That's right, and particularly now at the at the critical moment when the United States is being so hawkish and even hostile against China, simply doing fair trade in technological licensing, and also even in having more Chinese scholars and students to participate in high-tech researchers. So this is something that is more compelling for us to go more to European countries.
Compelling, why not, Mr. Guo? York, you'll wait a little bit later.
Actually, Merkel will have great difficulties with the export controls, especially on military goods.
Why is that?
Because of domestic political opinion. She has a government which doesn't have a very solid majority, because she depends, of course, on a second coalition partner. And they are very strong on this. Right. The Greens are becoming stronger and stronger in Germany, not yet in parliament, but in opinion polls and everywhere. And they would not like to see export controls to be loosened. It's not something which Merkel can just say, I agree. It has to be agreed by the entire German parliament.
Exactly. It's going to be very, just look at how you show it. It's going to be very difficult. The facial expression Daniel's face earlier. Another thing, multilateral. Okay, so now China, Germany, of course, holds high the multilateral system, because many believe it really benefits the two sides in real terms. And therefore, you have a Washington that seems to prefer to withdraw from the international system, saying me first all the time. Will that be an opportunity for real for the two sides to cooperate? I mean, China and Germany. Not just potential, but for real.
Yes, let me briefly hijack your show to answer maybe the thing about the export control.
Okay, 30 seconds to hijack.
We talk about military equipment primarily, or something which is closely related to military equipment. And that could be in the range, I don't know, 5 to 10 billion a year. Now, Europe and China trade €1 billion a day. So it doesn't really swing the needle. I think it's more an issue of phase, because it's going back to 89. Coming back to the multilateral, of course, I mean, the two largest exporters in the world want to basically safeguard the mechanism that actually let them build this up. And the largest...
It's also kind of trust, isn't it, from the Chinese side at least to see it.
Well, China benefited hugely from 2001 onward from WTO. Germany benefited always, and the US is now actively dismantling it as the largest importer in the world. Of course, we have a common interest. Now, the two countries have to find a place to meet together, and that was just recently something which was cancelled, so it's really high time. We need in business primarily something where we can see there is a tangible result.
Aspiration is one thing, it seems that you're suggesting, but pragmatic implementation of possible cooperation, that's another thing. We hope one equals to another, but it's not necessarily always the case. So, Mr. Guo, with what kind of spirit that the two countries have to be able to have in order to guarantee there will be something, as both see some opportunity?
There's an opportunity soon to go beyond the spirit. Because very soon an arbitration body at the WTO will lose its last judge, basically, and it will no longer be able to function.
The appellate body, which is the so-called the teeth of WTO, as they say.
And there's an occasion for China, Europe, not Germany alone, Europe and other countries in the world to form a coalition of the willing and say, we do something without the US. But that we do something would mean that these countries would say, we create perhaps a new body, a new rule, and we ourselves agree that if somebody has a ruling against me, I will accept it.
Of course, those are two things that needs to be in the principle, right? Of course, that also means wide consensus among all the parties that they would agree upon all these principles when those things are being established. But are you talking about aspiration, or are you talking about possibility for implementation? As you just said, it's going to be very soon.
It could be done in 2 months, but there the question is, do we go beyond the talk of multilateral system and rules-based, and somebody comes with a proposal, and somebody has to take the initiative and says, okay, this is my proposal. Do you sign up or not?
Now you look at, Professor Liu, we've been in this room talking about China-US trade discussions for many times. If you look at the timeline, October is a timeline for re-engagement, quote-unquote, through negotiation at least, and then December likely to be another timeline when the tariffs from the Chinese side, which have been suspended for a long time, likely to go down if things are not likely to getting better. So if you look at the timeline, what Daniel is saying right now, is it workable? Is there a possibility?
I think there is, because both of these countries, and particularly China, have benefited a great deal, to play on a rule-based multilateral platform, and WTO earned the respect simply because it has a pilot body to settle disputes. And China sometimes wins, sometimes loses, but we really abide by it. But now, when it's getting paralyzed with the U.S., the obstruction, it is high time, because we have over $200 billion of trade. So there's definitely going to be disputes. So we have to find a way to mediate and arbitrate these issues. Otherwise, when disputes are not really solved, and they can easily go and provoke the hostility against each other. So
and the ill feelings, for sure.
Yeah, this is something that we have to go for it, particularly now when we do not have a very strong political trust now.
Things are not rosy, as all of you gentlemen know very well, particularly these days. But let me just say, the economy, the economic growth rate, both Germany and China has been going down, even though people could argue it is on a global basis that we're talking about. But Germany and China are some of the economic pillars of the world. So how do you see that trend? How will that, if we think about it in the short term, likely to have an impact about the so-called priorities that the two economies are likely to do with one another? Mr. Guo, this is really your home turf about the economy.
The economy actually looks weaker than it is, perhaps. I think part of the slowdown in trade will be temporary, because it's really only US-China. And Europe, China is wide open. Right?
But you look at the U.S. growth rate, the GDP also down to only 2% recently.
Okay, there's always cycles, right? And German growth rate is, everybody says, 1.5 trend. 1 year it's 1, next year it's 2, then 1, right? Not a big deal. The key question is whether China then continues 6, 5, 4, 3.
I'm not sure whether it's 4 or 3.
Or whether
we are economists, we don't play that game.
So what I'm saying is, this slowdown should concentrate the mind of the politicians. If you want to do something concrete to help trade, here it is.
Yes, there is enough momentum, at least, when it comes to the trend of the economy to do something about it. Finally, before we go, we have only less than a minute and a half left. Mr. Whitaker, China and Germany is not just about trade. There are many other things that the two countries agreed upon with one another. Climate change, many others. How much will those be able to provide more momentum about cooperation? Short term.
Well, first of all, I guess the economic downturn is cyclical. Everyone was living off cheap money, and now we're ending the period that was. I guess now it's really for us to open up our markets. We need an investment agreement. It's very interesting to see that China and Europe agreed to finish this end of 2020, exactly when Germany has the presidency of the European Union. So Merkel personally will still be in office and drive for this. We just need tangible results to tell business, markets, despite all these negative news media, there are some markets that open up even more.
And what about the other two gentlemen? Some thoughts, briefly. Mr. Guo.
Climate change is the ideal area where the two can collaborate. We both have good technologies. I think we can open the market. But it's really something where leaders can only sit down and say, okay, let's have the same line globally, and otherwise everything is okay.
Yeah. Professor Liu, final
I
word.
think from China's side, we can really use China and German cooperation as a good showcase to show that how China can really further open its door, for example, not only in the manufacturer side, but on the financial side.
I see.
And then, we can really show to the world that by collaborating together and by deepening our cooperation, we can do far more to help these two economies.
Liu Baocheng, Daniel Guo, and Jörg Whittaker. What a pleasure, gentlemen, to have you, the three of you, in the studio for your insights. Really appreciate it. Thank you. And you're watching World Insight, coming to you live from Beijing. I'm Tian Wei. Still to come on the program, we get up close and personal with the Philadelphia Orchestra. How has their music bridged the gap between China and the U.S. for decades on?
Part of a continuum. We've been through.
This is the Philadelphia Orchestra's most recent performance in China. In the Grand Concert Hall of the National Performing Arts Center in downtown Beijing. Music is at the heart of it all, winning fans in China. Though the artistry of the Philadelphia Orchestra carried away the audience, there are a few sitting in the gallery who enjoy the moment of music more than most for its historical significance. Ambassador Nicholas Platt is already in his late 80s. He has been to China many times, starting from the last century, facilitating the first ever performance of the Philadelphia Orchestra in China in the 1970s. When the ice between Washington and Beijing began to thaw, Eugene Ormandy, the orchestra's conductor then, one of the most legendary and charismatic conductors of his time, did not want to miss that unprecedented opportunity. But for an America and a China, which did not even talk to each other for decades due to the Cold War, and a China which was still in the middle of the Cultural Revolution, you bet things were hard to arrange. Ambassador Platt knows all the inside stories, as he was literally part of them and arguably shaping them. 1973, you were instrumental in making sure the first ever performance of the Philadelphia Symphony Orchestra to China. You were young at the time.
36 years old.
Oh my God, think about it.
Yeah.
What was it like? The negotiation process difficult with the Chinese authorities?
Yes, it was a very, very painstaking. And we had all kinds of details, etc., which were set in place. But there was one big issue that was not resolved, and that was which of Beethoven's symphonies should be played. And the Chinese side very much wanted Beethoven's Sixth Symphony. It was up to me to explain to Mr. Ormandy why. But in any case, he said, I don't like that symphony and I'm not going to play it. And
as an artist,
that was
very determined.
And I said to him, Maestro, you know, the authorities in China have given us a strong request from the very top to play Beethoven's Sixth. He said, you know I hate that symphony. And I said, well, let me try and explain to you why it is that the Chinese love the Pastoral Symphony. First of all, the Chinese love program music. In other words, music that's about things, places, scenery, etc., etc. And Beethoven's Sixth is one of the great pieces of program music. It's all about life in the countryside. And here you have the Chinese Communist Party coming to power on the back, and that sounds to them like the revolution. And then you have a big, peaceful fifth movement ending of the symphony, and that represents to the Chinese the victory of the Communist Party. Normandy looked at me and he said, okay, well, when in Rome, I should do as the Romans wish, but you have to get me the scores. So I got 70 scores from Shanghai and 50 scores from Beijing. They were all marked up differently, but the orchestra knew the symphony cold, and they also knew to watch the maestro, and he played it. They played it very beautifully.
At the end of the day, did the maestro also enjoy that trip?
At the end of the day, when I said goodbye to the maestro, someone poked me and they said, you know, the maestro really doesn't need a plane to get back to the United States.
He could literally fly back.
He could just fly back.
Feeling very much elevated
Yes.
throughout the process.
Yes.
Did you still remember what was it like that this initiative to bring Philadelphia Symphony Orchestra to China was brought up?
Well, I think that in the overall bigger picture, we found from our relations with the Soviet Union that music could play a very important role. So when we started up with China, I think the powers that be, which was not me, but they thought that music should be a part of this relationship. And I wasn't involved in the initial decision to bring the orchestra. This was done by President Nixon and Henry Kissinger. But I believe, and knowing Ormandy, I believe Ormandy lobbied very hard for this, and Ormandy usually got what he lobbied for.
Two things happening at the same time, I guess. One is this relationship at this initial stage with a performance coming from one of the most well-known symphony orchestras from the U.S.
Yes.
On a Chinese stage. You are also witnessing the maestro, Normandy, as well-known as he is, as charismatic as he is, literally having himself elevated almost into another world. So what was it like, this combination? And at the same time, you are a young diplomat. This is once-in-a-lifetime experience.
Well, I was concerned, you know. I was wondering about audience reaction. I was worrying about Ormandy's reaction. I was worrying about whether the orchestra itself was going to do all right. I already knew that the orchestra was extremely good at making friends with people, because we were staying at the Minzu Hotel, and the first concert was at the Minzu Concert Hall. But I came to see them the day after they had arrived, and there was a commotion outside and a big crowd and frisbees flying around. And the orchestra members had brought their frisbees, and they were throwing them, and people in the street had never seen a frisbee before. They thought that was terrific. And from that moment, the two sides and the peoples really made up their minds that this was going to be a good thing.
The Philadelphia Orchestra is one of the most preeminent music ensembles in the world. It is widely admired for its distinctive sound, and it is desired for its keen ability to go to your heart and to lead your imaginations with peerless artistic quality. Generations of talented musicians have worked to earn their place in this outstanding orchestra, including these two, Renard and David, who not only have stories to tell about music but also about history. They were originally in the orchestra which traveled to China in 1973. 1973.
Yes. We did not have anything to do with how this was set up, but they set it up for us, and it was really an incredible experience.
Yeah.
It was a very special thing, and it received a huge amount of news. I can remember for weeks beforehand hearing about it. It was in the papers, on the TV, on the radio. It was a major, major thing in Philadelphia for us.
Yeah.
And just a couple of weeks before they left, I got a call from our personnel manager, and he said that we would like to have you come to China. And I was really incredibly surprised and thrilled. And as soon as I hung up, I thought, oh, I don't even have a passport. So I called back, and he said, well, don't worry about it. We will take care of it, which they did. I had never been out of the United States. And I remember Beijing at that time was, so much smaller than it is now. And there was a lot of farmland. I can remember seeing people out working in it, and there were these wooden carts driven by these animals. And it was just, it was almost like a whole totally different world for me.
Yeah, in the center of town where we were staying, it was all, everybody riding bicycles. Very few cars.
I've never seen so many bicycles in my life. I mean, millions of them. At times during the day when everybody was leaving for work or something, it was literally a sea of bicycles. I've never seen anything like that anywhere in the world.
Holding a violin in your hand, of course, you remember the first time. You know, 23-year-old, you were telling me, and you knew this was historical. I mean, it's in China during the middle of the Cultural Revolution.
I mean, it was a very large audience, and we had gotten some information on their tradition, I guess, where at the end of a piece, they would applaud for us, and we were asked to applaud back to them.
Oh, did you do that?
Oh, yes. Yes.
Did you enjoy it?
Well, yes, it was quite a new experience.
You performed the Yellow River Concerto.
Yes.
For the very performance in China.
It wasn't like as I remember, the concertos that we are used to, you know, like Rachmaninoff or Tchaikovsky, Beethoven. This seemed more rhapsodic, but I mean, do you think?
Exactly. I was thinking exactly the same word.
Rhapsodic.
Yes, it was very melodic. It was very romantic in the harmonies. It was actually a lovely piece. The audiences reacted to it. And then when we returned from China, we played it in the United States.
Yeah. Oh, did you?
Yes.
How the audience
reacted? We made a
then?
recording.
Yeah, that's right. We made a recording. The audiences loved it. I mean, it's beautiful music. What's not to love?
When you came over here in 1973, that's a time I didn't even get to see. So I envy you guys, in fact. But it was a critical juncture of change for China too. What was China like then compared to your perceptions?
My only perceptions, I had no perceptions of China whatsoever.
We all read about China in our history books, but to actually be here in '73, I mean, there wasn't the same buildup of industry, there wasn't the same buildup of hotels.
It was also very different from 1973 to 1993, about 20 years difference. I mean, it was like the whole world had changed here.
Yes.
In '73, everybody looked alike. They dressed exactly the same type of clothes, the same colors. Everybody had the same haircut. It was even difficult to tell the men from women. And then it was totally different. I've actually never seen a country change so much
in 20 years
and change so impressively and grow so astonishingly as China.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's one of the biggest names now, not only in the classical music scene worldwide, but also being the third music director in the history of the Metropolitan Opera. Though it is a tradition for the world's best orchestras to work with talents from all over the world, Yannick's generation, though, is extremely fascinated by that and tries to bring out the best through every collaboration, which of course includes cooperation with Chinese musicians. When I was sitting with him on the stage in the concert hall of the National Theatre, he told me he's been to China countless times. He said it with a bright twinkle of light in his eyes. Philadelphia Orchestra has been really throughout history making things happen. The very first historic trip to China and opening the door between two great nations.
I always believe and will always believe that music is beyond everything else in the relations between humans. And not only humans, by the way. I think animals, I think even nature and plants. Music is part of an order of the universe which brings every element and every people together.
So inclusive.
It is very inclusive. And this is precisely why it's a language. And music stops when words fail. What you cannot express with words, music can let you express it. And this is why when it's more tense between countries or nations, it's not necessarily about talking or representing. Of course, when we come here, we represent our country, but it's more than this. We try to connect to the hearts of the people, and we feel welcome by the people of China. And this is what moves me a lot, and this is why we keep doing it.
What was it like to be the conductor and the artistic director of this orchestra, this one of the best in the world, and you're walking in the footsteps of some of the biggest names ever in the field of music? What was it like? There must be a lot of... Are you nervous? Are you curious? Are you on a daily trip to find out?
A daily trip to find out. This is great. I love this because I think this is also our responsibility as musicians. So, of course, conductors, and when we are caretakers of such institutions with a long history, we are much smaller than the history of the institution, you know? The Philadelphia Orchestra has been blessed with very few conductors in the history. So it's now 119 years old because it was founded in 1900. And I'm only the number 8th as music director.
There we go. Congratulations, my friend.
So this is actually, you know, everybody spent a lot of time here with Philadelphia. And of course, when I was given that task, I was never nervous because I knew what I could bring, but I take it with a lot of sense of responsibility. I take it very seriously and with a lot of care. That I need to, it's a jewel that I'm taking care of for a few years and then will pass to the future.
How would you enrich yourself?
Yeah.
How would you be able to break the mold that you yourself created not long ago? That's my question.
It's a beautiful question, and you're right that self-enrichment or self-cultivation is very, very, very important. In music, the short answer to this is that I feel that in music and art in general, what we do is express feelings that actually come from the life. And what is dangerous is that we're so much sometimes in the music that you forget to live. What is the key to this self-cultivation is to make sure that you still live. What does that mean? Simple things as to walk and watch the trees, the people, read a lot, books, and also just see natures, take time with my family, take time with my partner, take time with all the people, my friends.
People you love.
For the conductor, with such great ensembles and great musicians, constantly, every gesture I make has an impact. And I know immediately if what I do or what I ask, what I'm for, if the orchestra doesn't understand, or if it's not good, or it could be better, or if my idea is not natural. I get the immediate feedback, not verbally, but by the playing. I'm 44 now, but I hope I'm going to conduct until I'm 94, so I will have maybe another 50 years. And I know that I'm at the very beginning only of my journey. And for me, it's very important every day to wake up and be conscious of this.
Let the music play, the Philadelphia Symphony Orchestra for China. Thank you. That is all the time we have for today. If you'd like to see more, try to find us World Insight CGTN into your search engine or check out our YouTube channel. Also follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Sina Weibo. From me, Tian Wei, and everyone on the World Insight team, thanks for watching. Tune in again next time for more insights across China and around the world. Good night.